On this episode of the South Loop Strength and Conditioning Podcast, Todd sits down with 5-time CrossFit Games athlete Elisabeth Akinwale.
Hi guys, this is Todd from South Loop Strength and Conditioning. I'm here with Elisabeth Akinwale, and we're going to have a good conversation today. Elisabeth is a 5 times CrossFit Games athlete. She is currently the head coach at Brick CrossFit in Chicago, which is just open. They have their first real week of classes this week after doing some free trials for folks. She has a website at elisabethakinwale.com. That's Elisabeth with an S. She has social media, Instagram, Akinwale, and I think most of you guys probably know who she is anyway, so we don't need to spend too much time introing her. So, Elisabeth, thanks for hanging out with me today.
Thanks for having me.
How are you? You just got done coaching a little bit?
I did, yes.
Yeah. So you are the head coach at the new Brick CrossFit.
Yes.
How does that feel? How's that going?
It's going great. It's great. It's something I've wanted for a while, getting a more day-to-day coaching role, but definitely needed the right set of circumstances for that to work for me, and kind of just for life to be in the right spot. So I'm really excited about it. It's a great thing.
So for you, you've been a competitor for a while. I think your first CrossFit Games was 2011. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yep.
And so you've been training seriously since then. You have some experience coaching, but you're kind of transitioning into this full-time role.
Right.
How does it work, basically trying to transfer what you know as an athlete into communicating with people on a coaching level?
Well, I think first off, whether right or wrong, I think being an athlete and being known gives you some sort of credibility with some people. So having had a lot of experiences, I feel like people know that I've been there. I know what this feels like. I know what this process is like. I know what it's like to stick in it through the process. But that being said, I also have my personal experiences are very different than the average member, and a vast number of people don't even know what I do. So sometimes it's completely irrelevant. But for me personally, I think the things that can make you successful and have longevity as a competitor are the same things that can make you successful in reaching your personal goals and have longevity just in your normal, fitness seeking lifestyle. So I really don't think it's that different. So that's how I see it, connecting.
Sure, yeah. And I think that there's often an issue with high-level athletes trying to coach, because to them what they do is just intuitive and it's easy, and they don't necessarily have the self-awareness relative to how they do what they do. So it's like, I don't know how to explain this to you, because I can just do it, and I don't understand why you can't.
Absolutely, and it's very true. I had this conversation with, I was working with another coach just the other day, and so I try to do as much research as I can. I try to always learn, and I feel like that's partly why I wanted to be coaching on a day-to-day basis in a gym, is because that's the only way I'm going to become the best coach possible. But you're right, especially in the beginning, it's just like, we'll just do this, And I do tend to demo, and I do tend to do like tactile cueing, and I think that's kind of the beginning, and then you start obtaining the language to convey the different ideas that you're trying to convey. So yeah, like that's definitely a challenge.
Sure. I mean, and just sort of knowing you as a person, I know that you're a very reflective person. So, even if you are maybe more talented in terms of movement or whatever, than some people who may be coming in, I know that you personally ask a lot of questions and want to know the right way to do things and all that type of stuff. And I've sort of seen you over the years, work on a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's so true. And I think having been around for a number of years, you do see that there's kind of just doing it, and then there's doing it right, and there's another way of doing it right, and then there's so there's always more, there's always digging deeper, and so yeah, there's never kind of, I've got this master, check it off the list. It's kind of an ongoing process.
Yeah, for sure. And so you have recently started working with Chad Vaughn on some weightlifting stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and you were mentioning how you sort of had to rebuild some stuff from the ground up.
Right.
I think you're talking about your squat in particular.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's the deal with that? What's he making you do?
Well, if you have heard of his contraption squats setup.
I don't know about it.
Yeah, it's basically just, my mechanics on my squat have always been, I think, terrible.
You do have freakishly long femurs.
I do, right. So I wasn't really gifted with the setup.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges with being generally fairly athletic and fairly strong coming into the CrossFit world,
You figure it out. You figure
things out. You figure out a way.
Life finds a way.
Some adaptations or some little personal quirks work, but at a certain point, sometimes there's a better way. And I've never really actually wanted to address my squat for quite a while, and it's just kind of never happened. You have to kind of collide with the right person at the right time. And so, Chad being so incredibly experienced, and I think he really understands sort of where I am with my athletic life and kind of what I want to accomplish. So it's just a really good fit, and he's probably the most patient person I've ever interacted with, and I think that's so. I don't know, that's so meaningful to me because he's also so successful. So that says something to me about, how do you become that successful?
Sure.
It's not by, pounding something into the ground. It's, having patience and being really observant and being willing to pull back and take the time to address things. And that's in contrast to how I've felt in some years of my training. You know what I mean? Like having this sense of urgency, like, well, if I want to win the games, I have to do it now because I'm not getting any younger. So it's got to be right this second.
Yeah. And this person posted this lift on Instagram, and I need to beat them, and all that type of stuff. Sure,
right.
No, that makes sense. I mean, it's one of those things too where focusing on fundamentals has almost become like a cliche, right? Mm-hmm. It's just here's some John Wooden quote, focus on your fundamentals, and everyone sort of knows it,
right?
But to actually do it is different.
And it's funny because I'm finding myself that's the same thing I preach, but to actually yourself say, hey self, I'm not doing any lifts in my conditioning pieces right now, or I'm not going to squat heavy right now. It's really hard to do. It's really uncomfortable, but kind of like you said, do it. I can't encourage other people to do it if I'm not willing to do it, because that's not right. So but to really do it, to really pull back, to really keep up on, okay, I'm working on my my core stuff for gymnastics specifically. I'm sitting down doing this. Or I'm, like I said, pulling back off of, pounding out high rep EMOM lifts or whatever it is, because I actually want to fix this problem. It's basically trying to practice what I preach.
Sure. And then how do you deal? Because again, it's one thing to say that, and it's another thing to do it and even understand what it looks like to try to fix your squat, right? You have a coach who's saying, hey, listen, this is messed up. We need to do it this way. I don't care if you have long femurs, figure it out. But, what's probably more challenging is the mental chatter. So you discussed, it's hey, you're not squatting heavy. Is your back squat going down?
Right.
What if you can't snatch as much?
Right.
My clean isn't feeling as good recently. Does that mean I'm worse? How do you address that? Because I think that's the most challenging part for people.
It is. And I think, just to start off with, I think having been around, I feel like in CrossFit, I guess 5 years is a long, you know what I mean? It's a long time or whatever.
Yeah.
So, not to sound all I'm this old, wise, whatever. But 5 years of doing it is a fairly long time. It feels like. And so that gives me enough, I think, comfort level because it's sort of I know where I can go with approach A. I already know what can happen there. Mm-hmm. So why would I just keep pounding approach A when I've never explored B, C, D, So kind of that's just a natural curiosity, a maturity level, just as a person and as an athlete, where you understand that things are a process and you understand that things will come around. I've had, just right now, I'm not very fit. If you put me in a competition, it would be very uncomfortable. But knowing, I've been here before, and I understand, today I was working out, did a conditioning piece, I'm I literally get every year, I'm how was I ever fit? Compared to right now, how was I ever fit? But I know from experience that it will be back. I know from experience that it'll probably be better, so sort of just, like I said, the experience, the maturity, and I do work a lot on. We were just talking about sports psychology. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's something you have to kind of always stay up on, whatever practices you want to put in place, because that's what will help quiet that chatter. Sure. I literally do not care what Jane Smith is doing in her training. It literally has nothing to do with what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. Her life is not my life, and just on game day I'll be ready.
Yeah, sure. No, because I think that's really, really hard for people to quiet that voice that's always doubting them.
Oh, absolutely.
They may know what they need to do.
Yep.
Then they have a little voice in their head that kind of just chatters at them and then makes them sort of impulsively like I need to back squat again, like, oh my god, I lost it all.
Put more plates on.
Oh, please.
No, it's very true, and I think that our just general culture now of like social media, it just exacerbates that, and everything's a competition. Whether it's, well, I need more sponsors, or I need more likes, or I just need that confidence boost that I'm gonna, it's funny. I think people do get this weird sense of confidence, like, well, I beat so and so on this workout that they posted on Instagram in November, so I'm gonna beat her at regionals in May. Yeah. Like, it's just this weird false security that I think people do kind of need sometimes.
But I mean, you sort of walked the path long enough and seen what you're capable of, that you just trust the process.
Right.
So, you know what, I know that I felt this way before. Yeah. And maybe it wasn't emotionally comfortable, but when it came time to perform, I was able to do what I needed to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And do you purposely attempt to detach from outcome with performance at all either? Like, I
do.
Because that's a hard balance. How do you say, you know what, I want to train to win, but I know I'm going to be fine if I don't?
Right. Again, the experience helps a lot. So it's actually really sad to me when I think about the various years I've been at the games. So the year I placed the highest, I was miserable. I was miserable during the competition. I was miserable after the competition. And I remember, it's just so sad. Like, why are you doing this? And, and I remember looking at, so that year I placed 10th. And I remember there was another girl who had placed below me. Yeah. And she was like, happy? And I was like, how is she happy right now? It's like, to me, that is the most tragic thing I can think of. Sure. You dedicate all this time, you're devoted to it, you're so committed. Everyone around you is making sacrifices in some way, and you're miserable. Like, so this year actually I placed my lowest, and I had the most fun. I enjoyed. So
if you have fun, you do bad, and if you right,
well, so that's what I thought. I thought even in training, like, you would think, well, I have to be hard on myself. I have to be critiquing myself every moment. Right. And that's just not the case. Like, I think you have to take every little thing as a step towards the goal, and understand, like, that part of the reward is just the growth that happens through the process. Because only one, so if the only thing that's success is winning, then only one person gets to be successful, and the odds are pretty high. You have to have the stars align, the workouts align, whatever. Right. It's just, there's just so much more to it, and I think, do I want to place higher? Absolutely. And I've had that weird conversation with myself where I'm like, well, if I'm competing against myself, why am I even out there? Like, I can just compete against myself at home. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, but just even during a workout, you can't be pacing off people. You can't be just doing, what's required in relationship to other people. It's about you doing your best. So if I'm in training with a group of friends and I'm the fastest one, but I sandbagged the workout, is that a game, or is that's weak? Yeah. It's really, I think over time it just becomes more. It's just more internal experience. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and then the other aspect of that too is that even if your outcome is winning, and you said, okay, this is what I need, and then you get it, it's often not that good. Sure. You feel real good for X amount of time, and you're like, wait, I'm still the same person. I still feel basically the same way. Right. So that's what they said. I've never won, so I don't really know. But I'm just kidding. Never wanted anything. Yeah. No. I just think it's just more than that. And I think too, when you don't win, you realize, okay, well, what is my contribution to my family, this world, my community, whatever it is? What contribution am I making? Is that contribution based on me winning? Or do I have something else I'm offering? Yeah. And so I think that my contribution is more than where I place. That's just not the be all and end all. Sure. I want to win, but I think going through the process properly is how you win, if that makes sense. So focusing on, being mindful in the moment, enjoying the process, thinking about how can I maximize myself, either athletically or personally, that's how you would win. In my opinion. Yeah, sure. So, you just talked about mindfulness for a second. Do you have a mindfulness practice? Do you meditate? I do. Not right now, not as much as I need. I need to be a little more regular. Things have gotten very frazzled. Right. And it's what's the quote about, like, oh, if you can't find time to meditate, you need to meditate twice as much. Oh my gosh, it's so true. And I actually coached a seminar this weekend, and it helped me sort of kind of get back. I kind of was reviewing some of my materials, but at various times I've attended meditation class.
What kind?
Samatha meditation.
Unfamiliar.
I've also been to a Zen class, which I found much more difficult.
Zen is kind of brutal.
Yeah, exactly. So Samatha gives you more like, it was described as like, it's like you have a project. So the project is kind of like accounting and different things like that.
Yeah.
So it's something to focus on.
Do your homework.
Yeah, exactly. So no, but it's unbelievable how powerful it is. It really is. And I've also, just on the competition side, I have some really, in my mind, very distinct experiences of, okay, this competition I was really on point with like my mental practices, and this one I wasn't, and how different it feels. It's incredible. It's really amazing.
Yeah. So when you are meditating, with the understanding that the practice can kind of come and go, I know for me personally, it comes and goes, right?
Yeah.
Like I like the idea of doing 20 minutes every morning.
Yeah.
Realistically, I do 5 if I'm doing a good job, and then I'll stop for 2 or 3 weeks, and I'll be like, wait a second, like I screwed up, like need to start going again.
Right.
What does your practice look like if you're doing what you want to do?
So really, it's not as even as prescribed as like 20 minutes a day, but it would probably be just whenever I have free time. So it'd be, okay, my son's at the playground and he's too cool to play with me now, so I'm sitting on this bench, let me meditate right now.
Sure.
And then it'd also be a practice more specifically around my training session. So coming in the gym, kind of going through some steps that include breathing and some visualization and stuff like that. And then also more visualization within like the training session. So those kinds of things would be what would be me in a good state.
Sure.
So yeah, that's what I need to get back to. So thanks for bringing me that.
There you go. So another reminder.
Yeah.
Do you ever do negative visualization?
No.
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Yeah,
I actually try to not do that.
yeah, it was something that, this is sort of like a very haphazard, probably mostly incorrect summary of this concept, but I believe it was a discussion on Peyton Manning and then a few other, high-level athletes. Basically, they do visualization in terms of like, okay, I'm like imagining myself going through the movement, so like I'm imagining myself like reading this play or whatever. Then they also visualize what they would do if something goes completely wrong.
Really?
Right, so it's not just like, oh, I'm
Interesting.
imagining this happening perfectly,
Yeah.
but like, what will I do if I throw an interception?
Yeah.
What will I do if, my coverage gets screwed
Yeah.
up? What will I do if, like, this guy just, like, totally crushes his blocker and is coming for me?
Yeah.
Right? So they kind of, like, prepare for multiple situations and not just, like, visualizing the perfect thing.
I think that, I think in those kind of roles, it makes more sense because there's more moving parts that aren't in their control.
Yeah.
Usually the things that I do are pretty much in my control.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a fair statement, but that's how it feels right now as I'm thinking about it. But yeah, I call it like if I like have a catastrophe, because sometimes you accidentally visualize, like I'll accidentally visualize the barbell just coming on my head, and I'll be like, stop, rewind. Like I actually actively try to stop that, start over, and I go for perfection.
Yeah.
This is funny. So I really noticed this about, and this is probably skewed, the coverage from the Rousey home fight.
Yeah.
And I kept seeing this piece from Ronda Rousey on Jimmy Fallon talking about, well, I'm not going to let her kick me in the head.
Yeah. I saw
and
that
then
too,
I saw a piece with Holly Holm talking about how she was so emotionally invested in her visualization that she was like literally tearing up.
Yeah.
So like she visualized the success and got it. And I mean, it could just be chance.
Sure.
But I don't I visualize what I want to have happen.
Sure.
That's what I want in my head.
Yeah.
I want just all affirmative cueing, all, everything, all that positive self-talk, basically.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because it's definitely a line to walk where, you can, as a coach, I can see if someone psychs themselves out for a lift.
Yeah.
I can see them.
Yeah. You can see it,
they know they're not going to make it in their head, and then
Yes.
they walk up to the bar and it just crushes them.
Right.
And you're like,
Yeah.
dude, you like, 'cause you can see there's like a hesitation before they go. You're like, there's no chance.
And as an athlete, I just won't take the lift. Like if I'm there, it's not happening because I think that's sometimes honestly that's when you get hurt.
Yeah, for sure.
But also, this is I feel like I'm a good enough game time decision shifter or whatever.
Sure.
That I'm not even worried about if the worst case happens, like I'll deal with that then.
Yeah,
You know
sure.
what I
Yeah,
mean?
you feel confident in your ability to pace or like change your
Yeah.
weight that you're gonna try to hit in a competition, like whatever.
Yeah, and I think that's and that's experience too, because I know now, like if I go out too hard, I'm totally capable of just kind of like pulling back and readjusting.
Sure.
Versus like you're not going to actually die. Like
Yeah,
it's going to be
definitely.
okay.
Yeah.
Or
Because,
I
like-
can miss a lift and I'm still going to go up or whatever it is. You know.
Yeah, you know what it felt like, and you're like, that's fine. Like I'll hit the next one.
Right,
Yeah, got
right.
it. I mean, because just sort of thinking about that negative visualization concept
Mm-hmm.
with maybe that legless rope climb workout at regionals. Was that 2 years ago? Where it was
Yeah.
the running and legless rope
Yes,
climbs.
yes.
You saw people just fall apart on it.
Yeah.
Right. So they'd miss one, or they'd get no rep for not touching the thing.
Yeah.
And they try to go again too soon.
Yeah.
And they were just crushed.
Yeah.
Right. So they have the crowd. It's like, come on, like
Yeah.
get behind her, get her up that
And
rope.
like,
It's
okay.
like no, she needs to stand
Yeah, I
there
know,
for
right.
literally 45 seconds, like not do anything,
Right.
and then maybe if she's lucky, she's gonna get another one.
Nice.
Right. But like people are screaming, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh my god, I have to push myself,
Yeah.
and you just miss. Right. So
Right.
It's kind of interesting to think about. There could be some value in having negative visualization in terms of pacing, where it's like, what am I going to do
Yeah.
if I screw up and
Yeah.
I blow up?
I think the value will be dependent on the athlete.
Yeah, sure.
So to be completely honest with you, I don't go that hard.
Yeah.
So like sorry, I like self-depreciating humor
Right.
too. I'm typically not in a place where like that type of situation would probably never happen to me.
Sure.
Because it's like I actually have to challenge myself to try to push the envelope
Sure.
to that point, like on
Yeah.
something like a strict handstand push-up or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I'm never the one who's like I just keep going and fail. Like
Right.
that ain't happening because
Yeah.
I just have too much like I don't know what it is, too much hold back in me.
Sure.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
or fortunately.
Yeah, I
But
was gonna say probably fortunately,
Right.
fortunately relative to the sport.
Yeah.
because the people who go out and blow up are usually not the ones who end up winning.
Yeah.
But that's cool. So you also have a background as a social worker.
I do.
So you worked as a social worker. You said in a variety of settings, kind of one-on-one with people in what organizational environments. Give me like a rundown of what that career looked like for you.
Yeah, a lot of variety actually in a short period of time. So when I started college, kind of on the path of wanting to be an athlete, had a series of injuries.
You did gymnastics.
I did, yeah. So I actually went away to school, got hurt, had a couple surgeries at school, came back home, got a full-time job and started going to school part-time. So the full-time job was actually at a social service agency. It was basically just a general family service agency. So they had chemical dependency treatment, domestic violence for males and females, family counseling, child protective services.
Sure.
So pretty much full spectrum. So I started out just in an administrative role. I was studying to be a social worker, and then I got a job as a caseworker for, so basically the county child protective services would contract with our agency to work one-on-one with families.
Got it.
So that's what I did going through college. And then also kind of mixed in there during that time, had some internships through school. So I did a hospital-based, so I worked in a NICU and a children's unit at a hospital. I've worked in, my next position, employed position was just in a women's chemical dependency treatment program, specifically working with people with traumatic brain injuries and addiction.
Wow.
What else? And then, so I came here to Chicago to get my master's degree.
And you got your master's at University of Chicago?
I
Is that
did,
correct?
yeah.
And where'd you do undergrad?
I graduated from a school called the College of St. Catherine, a little Catholic women's college in Minnesota.
There you go.
So probably no one's heard of it. But actually it was a great experience. I actually enjoyed that experience much more than my U of C experience. It just was much more practical learning, just hands-on. All our professors were like active social workers, and it was a great experience.
Yeah. So you were working with some of the most difficult behavior change circumstances possible, right? Chemical dependency, like abusive relationships, right? These are things that are historically very, very challenging to
Right.
get buy-in, to get change,
Right.
anything like that. How did you approach that process of getting buy-in from these people? Especially because a lot of them are probably not choosing necessarily to come to you. They're
Right.
being almost forced to,
Yeah.
correct?
So many,
It's not like it's someone like, oh, like, please
I
help
need
me.
some help,
Yeah,
right?
it's-
Yeah, I think one thing is kind of framing things as it is a choice. So even if you're court ordered to be here, you're still choosing to be here. You're choosing between going to jail and being here.
Right.
I think that simple thing in itself is pretty empowering, I mean, honestly, same thing with a workout. Like, oh, you're suffering through this work. You're not suffering. You're choosing. You actually have the privilege to have the health to be here to do this workout.
Sure.
Maybe the alternative is unpleasant for you. Maybe, you know, being unhealthy or going to jail is not, you know. But even if it's a choice between two things that you think are bad, it's still a choice. I don't know. I'm personally empowered by feeling like I have a choice. And then, you know, typically it was I actually was getting a lot of the lower, like when I was in the child protective area, it was like I was getting the lower risk cases because I was really, really new to everything. And so kind of just becoming an ally, becoming a friend, becoming a help, being, you know, making myself a help to this person. And typically it becomes more open door and open to that help.
Sure.
Even though they didn't initiate this process in the first place.
Yeah. So you found a lot of leverage in terms of making people feel like they had a choice. That was like the most helpful thing.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Do you apply any of that experience or knowledge to coaching people as well?
I think so. I think, you know, I really feel like the fitness climate is just very, you know, it's almost like beating your body in submission, and it's like I'm going to take control of my body, and as opposed to sort of like treating I don't think we treat ourselves with the compassion we would treat like our child or someone we care about.
Absolutely not.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
the stuff that I say to myself in my head, I would never say to another human being.
Right, exactly. And I think that's important. I think because all that mind-body connection is very real.
Yeah.
So if everything you say to yourself is like is negative or something you would never say to another human being, I think that's a big deal. So I feel like treating ourselves with compassion and you know, this workout is we're doing something good for our body. Like it's like a pleasant thing. Even when it's the most even out there during Murph, I'm like, sweet. This is an opportunity for me to grow as a person.
Sure.
Through this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it kind of just I like to look at people
this
as
burning pull-up bar is building character.
Hey, well, smart people, you know, you put gloves on your hands. It's not a big deal. Anyway, but you made me lose my train of thought.
Sorry.
That's okay. But I think just being compassionate to yourself, looking at yourself as, you know, a person. So social work's all about person and environment. Mm-hmm. So there's all these factors that are like coming in and telling us like how our body's supposed to look or how we're supposed to eat or we should cheat or not cheat. I'm doing air quotes, by the way, because I feel like the language we use is just so ridiculous. So if that, I'm kind of rambling now, but to me the social work aspect is incredibly important to coaching because it's just you're dealing with people and it's that person living in their environment. So how does their environment impact their nutrition? How does it impact their coming in and training during the holiday season?
Sure.
Or I think that, and I think as a competitor, people value kind of what you've done as an athlete. They know you're not like soft. And so it's actually kind of a nice pairing for me. I feel like, you know that I'm not soft, but I can still be compassionate with myself. And so can you. You can still get results and not have to kind of beat yourself up.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, because coaching, it's not just knowing facts and information.
Right.
Right? That's almost the easy part. Like,
right.
Hey, like, what are my macros? Like, well, like, let's, like, figure it out. Right?
Exactly.
You know, that's easy. Like,
right.
What program should I follow? I mean, you know, it's not necessarily easy, but, like, A1, A2, B1, right. B2,
right.
C, like, here you go.
Yep.
That's the easy part, right?
Yeah.
The hard part is, like, how do you get someone to buy in, like we were talking about before, to not succumb to, like, the little chatter and
right.
all that type of stuff.
Right.
So in terms of actually getting people, you know, to buy in, I think one of the things that's challenging is that as a coach, you don't know what their intentions are and you don't know what their life is like.
Yeah.
Right? So the things that we may see as, you know, lack of responsibility or lack of commitment or something like that, to the client are just an aspect of their life. Right? Like you don't know what's going on.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
So with social work, because again, you sort of mentioned the relationship between the person and the environment. How do you find the balance between holding someone accountable and not letting them sort of make excuses, right. but also recognizing that there are factors that are going to put them in a position that may make it more difficult for them to make a change that they know they need to make?
Yeah. I think being sort of like transparent with what you just said. Yeah. So kind of talking through that process. So is that something you really want to do? And here's the cost and here's the, you know, maybe you have to go against what your sister thinks and you're going to have to hear her chatter. And so how meaningful is this thing to you? And again, it's a choice. So you don't have to make this change.
Yeah.
I think in the end, it's sort of, CrossFit and social work are similar in that it's kind of like, they say like meet the person where they are and take it from there.
Sure.
And so kind of not putting your own expectations and value system or whatever on that person. So if I say, well, be disciplined, just be disciplined and do it. Well, maybe that's my, value system, but maybe it's not theirs.
Right.
And so I think, like I said, being as transparent as possible with kind of that thought process is helpful.
Yeah, and I notice with trying to help people with like nutrition, particularly in sleeping and things like that, a lot of people do have that discipline mindset, but it almost backfires on them.
Yeah.
Right? They think that they just need to try harder
Yeah.
at everything.
Yeah.
And it's like, you only have so much energy, you only have so much willpower. Like
Right.
you can't just try yourself into finding something that works all the time. Like
Right.
sometimes you need to like reevaluate like, the systems you're following and how you're allocating your time and all that type of stuff.
Absolutely.
Because it's not just more effort equals
Yeah.
better results all the time.
Absolutely. And I'm personally living it. So right now I'm just super, super busy. Like priorities kind of are always moving. So I think of it as like a scale, those scales that are actual balances, and you're trying to balance something that's always moving, but that's what it is. So sometimes you have to kind of let things ebb and flow. It's not like, it's not just black and white, basically. There's a lot of gray. So kind of, again, being
Sure.
like compassionate with yourself. Like,
Yeah.
So one slip up on what you plan to do nutritionally doesn't mean you're a failure. That kind of idea.
Yeah, that all or nothing mentality is very challenging,
Right.
very destructive.
Right, for sure. Even with even like if you program for a client, and I used to be like this. If it was written on that paper, it was being done. I was not deviating from that piece of paper. And to me, and I would sometimes make myself sick or be, because you're just going overboard.
Right.
And now it's just much more kind of ebb and flow. So like trying to be intuitive, trying to listen to myself. So I feel like that applies for anyone at any level of fitness training.
Sure. Yeah. So you've been doing your own conditioning workouts. Is that kind of? Are you doing any conditioning workouts?
I am.
You said you're not fit.
I'm not fit, but that doesn't mean I don't work out. I'm just not fit. So it's kind of like a mishmash right now. I'll put it that way. I'll be completely honest. Everything's not kind of completely worked out and in stone right now with how I'm going to be proceeding for the year.
Sure.
But I honestly think for me right now where I am, what I do for conditioning doesn't matter as much for my general like CrossFit conditioning. So it'll just be like I'll pull things from various sources that I think are good sources that have good. Because honestly, I like other people's creativity sometimes. Like I don't want to always have to come up with, this is so cool, but sometimes someone else came up with something cool.
Like, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Exactly.
I'll use that.
And then just making sure that there's movements integrated in there that are the movements I need to be working on. So yeah, my conditioning's a little bit all over the place right now.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's kind of all over the place, kind of intuitive, but a lot of the best athletes in the sport succeed with that.
Yeah, that's one thing that. So as I decided to kind of take control of my own little ship this year, I noticed that I can't think of any women who have really done that, but a lot of the top guys do. Rich Froning, Ben Smith, Scott Panchik, Kalipa. Okay, so I think a lot of in the past I would have thought, oh gosh, coaching yourself, that's a terrible idea. But I've gotten to the point where even when someone else is coaching me, this is going to sound terrible, sound totally uncoachable, but I'll be like...
Uncoachable athlete!
But just my opinions have, over 5 years of doing this,
sure.
Over being, you're the one who's standing there when Dave announces a workout, and that reaction you have. So if I have a certain reaction when you say run, then I know, then that's what I need to do. I need to go run. So I just trust myself too much at this point. I trust myself too much to put my opinions aside for someone else's. And so while input I would love, but in terms of like really being the decision maker, I just feel like I need to take that responsibility.
Yeah. Well, I think what ends up happening for a lot of people, where a lot of people do need a coach, is because they don't want to work on the things that they're bad at.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Or they'll
Sure.
overwork on the things that they're bad at. It's one of those things where like almost everything is a pendulum that can swing too far both ways, right?
Absolutely true. Because I've had that too, where it's, and even with a coach, I've had where it's really a negativity focus. It's a deficit focus. So moving into like a strengths focus. So even if it's a movement, even if it's a problematic movement, okay, what about this? How can I approach this movement from my strengths?
Sure.
So I'm explosive. So how do I make it an explosive movement? How do I just kind of basically turning everything around to frame it as developing strengths? Not, okay, you suck at, like literally walking to the gym every day. Well, you suck at running. You suck at running. You look like an old lady when you're running. Like, I've been told this. So
we don't have ACLs, so.
Well, hey, yes, exactly. So I'm working what I got.
Environment, person, no ACLs.
Hey, I'm working what I have, you know. But seriously, I think, you know, back to that, you know, mind, body, and all the things that we're talking about, you can't have a deficit focus. That's not, for me, that's not productive. I feel so much more capable when I focus on strengths, and that doesn't mean not getting everything up to the same high level of performance.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of value too in doing a sort of more intuitive type of program relative to learning how you react to different things and what feels good and what doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think that from my perspective, a lot of the best CrossFit athletes are way better at understanding what they can and can't do than people who aren't as good as them.
Yeah.
Right? Like they physically, the physical capabilities may be similar.
Right.
A lot of the people who are winning are much better at pacing relative to an event, relative to a weekend of events.
Sure.
That they know exactly what things should feel like for them.
Yeah.
And they can find that sweet spot pretty easily.
Right. So like last year, things were a little chaotic for me going up to the games, but it, like when it came down to it, I was like, well, here's the things I need to feel. And the words I use might not sound meaningful, but they are to me. Like, I need to feel fit, I need to feel strong. Yeah. So these are the things I need to do in this. I have whatever the distance between regionals and games was. Those are the things I need to achieve. So anyone else's program, it kind of becomes irrelevant at that point, because this is what I need to feel when I walk on that field. But I like when you said intuitive. I wanted to be able to be more intuitive this year because my schedule is sort of getting crazy. Like I took on a position where I'm answering to someone else versus being self-employed. My son's getting older. My son's getting involved in more sports. His schedule is changing. His needs are changing. So I need to be able to react and move things around. And to be honest, like I don't think anyone could keep up with my schedule in terms of like, well, this week my parenting schedule is this, and next week my parenting schedule is that. And
I'm going to have 30 minutes this day. I'm going to have.
Exactly. So instead of like having another full-time job trying to report everything to someone, that's kind of it was a big driver for me, wanting to be able to be flexible like that.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And you know, as someone who does coach people, like I see value in having someone write a prescription for you.
Of course.
But the other aspect of that too, though, is that I think a lot, and I was sort of saying this before, a lot of what I do for people is help them find that balance, because they don't know how much they should be working on something that they're bad at. They don't know how much they should maintain their strengths. They don't know how much volume is too much.
Absolutely.
You know, a lot of the value in a coach comes from giving you guidance in those aspects.
Yeah.
But there's also a value in a certain point at being able to do that yourself, not having to have someone tell you that.
Sure, yeah, and I think I think coaches are incredibly valuable. But I do think with a certain amount of experience, I feel capable of kind of figuring some of those things out.
Right.
Because like I said, for me, one of the biggest gauge, if I'm focusing on myself as a competitor, one of the biggest gauges, how do you feel when you walk out on that floor? So I can kind of channel that at any time and kind of know what things need to be brought up to speed.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's a whole other topic though, of training yourself to be your best you versus competing.
Right.
But yeah, right now we're still competing. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, some people just kind of have that switch in them, and it's hard to turn that off.
Yeah,
hard to turn
for
that
sure,
off.
For sure.
People going kicking and screaming out of the NFL and all those folks too.
Right. It's challenging, especially now with CrossFit. The sports side changing so much so fast, and I think the typical lifestyle of a games athlete being very much not the typical lifestyle of like an average adult person. And so like how much do you want to try to kind of do that, and how much do you want to live a different lifestyle? So it's challenging. Yeah. I actually feel thankful I got in like when I did, when it was like I'm still working full time at my desk job and I'm still at the games.
I can work out. I'm like just go to the games.
Yeah,
this is fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now it's like you have a full delegation training you and
right. Yeah, I mean it's one of those things where the glamour of being a professional athlete isn't necessarily what people think it is.
I think so. I mean, depending on your personality type, but also it's like it's a different type of professional athlete. Yeah. In terms of like financial opportunities and things. Sure. There's tons of opportunity that's pretty amazing, but from my experience, there's kind of a high cost to it. So it's not like literally just train, get a whole bunch of money, and you're ready to go.
Yeah.
It's also like you need to travel to this location and do this activity. You need to go to this competition. You need to do this.
Right.
So it's a lot of things that come with it that aren't necessarily conducive. So I always talk about this. We saw, probably more than 50% cut in the amount of moms we saw in the games field. I think we probably had eight or more 2 years ago. This year we had 3. Just because a lot of the things that typically come with this pro elite CrossFit whatever, they're really not conducive to like motherhood.
Having a reasonable family life.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, it's, to be honest, the only reason I can do it is because I'm a co-parent. So my son is with his dad sometimes. That's what allows me to even make this work. I don't know how people are doing it.
Yeah, it's definitely. I've seen similar stuff with bands. Right, like
I thought you meant like bands.
Yeah,
like
jump stretch bands, no, but with like music.
Yes, yes.
Everyone's sort of gunning for this, like, if we get to this level, like we can be on tour full time and all this stuff.
Right.
And then you get to that level, and it's not necessarily what you think it is. It's
Absolutely.
like, we have like a lot of obligations.
Yes,
like we have to do this tour that we don't really want to do. I'm only home for 10 days at a time.
Yep.
Like I hate being on a bus. Like my health is failing because I'm just like staying up late and drinking.
Right.
So
no, it sounds very similar.
Yeah.
And it's like you just said, it's not what you expect. I think there's so many people like, I want to be a games athlete. I want to be a games athlete. And I think part of that want is all the stuff that people think comes with it, but it's not. I don't mean to complain at all. It's amazing opportunities, but it's not all like, this is sweet. I'm just kicking it in the gym all day, and then
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, every there's problems with pretty much any life you can lead.
Sure.
Right. It's just kind of interesting.
You mean
to
it's
think
just never easy? Is that what you're trying to say?
It's just interesting to think about. People see one side of it, right?
Sure.
They see the Instagram posts that are gonna get sponsors and generate likes. They don't necessarily see the day in day out, like what does it actually feel like to sort of live that lifestyle. And speaking of balancing parenting and training and podcasting, you have to go pick up your son.
I do.
Shortly.
Oh wow, that went quickly.
You have to go pick up your son shortly. So before we wrap up, where should people go on the internet to find out about Brick CrossFit in Chicago?
Go to www.brickspot, so SPT, brickspt.com. You'll click on the Chicago link, and our schedule and everything will be up there. People have asked if I will actually be coaching there or if I'm just sort of like a mouthpiece. I will actually be coaching there on a regular basis.
The figurehead.
Coaching the CrossFits. Yeah, it's not a figurehead thing.
Yep.
So.
And you also run seminars.
I do.
Yeah, and those cover some of the stuff we talked about.
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
both performance-based in terms of like movement with gymnastics and weightlifting, and some of this mindset stuff too.
Absolutely, yep.
Which you have a pretty deep understanding of, both in a practical and a theoretical level. What is the deal with those? If someone wants to host one, what should they do?
Yeah, email to akinwaleinfo@gmail.com. And we can discuss me coming to your gym.
Cool. And then you also are on Instagram.
I am
active on there.
My Instagram is amazing.
Definitely follow it. Please.
Right. You can't miss it.
Yeah, you got to get that. I think your follower to following ratio is already pretty impressive, but could use a few more.
I think I should unfollow more people so that I have a better.
Yeah, you'll probably get like 3 more sponsors for like every 5 people you unfollow. So,
okay, good.
Yeah, just
I
that ratio. Like there's there's thresholds
yes.
once you cross it. So,
yes.
But what is your Instagram handle?
It's Akinwale.
Cool. And then what else should people know? Where else should they go? What else do you want them to follow up with?
That's pretty much it right now.
Cool.
If you go to those venues, you'll see what I'm about, what I'm doing. So, my website is under construction, so that should be up soon. I'd like to get back to my blog. I used to have a pretty active.
Is that still online anywhere?
Well, it's taken off because I was in the process of getting my website redone. Okay. So I always just had like a basic WordPress, and so I was trying to get an actual website. So busy. That hasn't completely been done, but I'm anxious to get it back up because there's so many things I want to blog about now.
Well, get the old ones up too, because I was actually trying to like prep for this and kind of go back and look at some stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't find this.
I know. I'm not sure why she had to shut down. I think she was like doing a changeover and whatever. So we got to get those back up.
It'll be back. There's some good posts on there. So ElisabethAkinwale.com. That's with an S rather than a Z. But you can just Google it if you can't figure it out, because you'll find it eventually. Elisabeth, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
This has been a pleasure.